Long before the grandeur of marble temples and the tales of legendary heroes, the Aegean world was a landscape of simple yet vibrant communities. On the sun-drenched island of Crete, across the scattered Cyclades, and along the rugged coasts of mainland Greece, small farming villages began to take root. Families cultivated fields of barley and wheat, tended flocks of sheep and goats, and cast their nets into the sparkling sea, weaving their lives closely with the rhythm of nature. Trade began to link these settlements, carrying pottery, tools, and goods from one village to another, hinting at the networks that would later span the entire Mediterranean. Life in these early communities was not solely about survival. Spirituality infused their daily routines, as people honored the forces that shaped their world. They built simple shrines, left offerings to gods of fertility and the harvest, and celebrated the cycles of life with rituals that connected them to the earth, the sea, and the heavens. In these quiet acts of devotion, a shared sense of identity began to emerge, one that would eventually unite the scattered villages into a culture that valued both community and the mysteries of the natural world. Though modest and unassuming, these settlements laid the foundations for something far greater. The first steps toward organized societies were quietly being taken, setting the stage for palaces, trade networks, and complex social structures that would rise in the centuries to come. From these early Aegean villages, the story of Greek civilization began to unfold, a story of resilience, innovation, and an enduring connection to the land and sea that would shape the culture, art, and philosophy of generations yet to come. As the Aegean settlements grew, one island rose above the rest, shaping a civilization that would leave an enduring mark on history. Crete became the heart of the Minoan world, where society flourished with remarkable sophistication and creativity. From this island, grand palaces like Knossos rose, their walls adorned with vibrant frescoes depicting dancers, athletes, and sacred rituals, while intricate plumbing and storage systems revealed an advanced understanding of engineering and daily life. Life on Crete revolved around the sea, which connected its people to distant lands and enabled a thriving economy built on trade with Egypt, the Near East, and across the Mediterranean. The Minoans lived in a world where artistry and spirituality intertwined. They worshipped goddesses and bulls, celebrating the cycles of nature and the forces that governed life, blending devotion with ritual in a society that prized beauty and balance. Their art captured motion, emotion, and the harmony of human and natural worlds, while their writing system, Linear A, hints at complex record-keeping and communication, much of which remains a mystery to this day. Skilled sailors navigated the waves with confidence, extending their influence across the sea without the need for conquest. Their power rooted in culture, trade, and innovation rather than warfare. In this way, the Minoans created a society both peaceful and powerful, artistic and practical, laying the foundations for the civilizations that would follow. Their mastery of architecture, maritime skill, and devotion to culture would resonate beyond their time, echoing through the stories, trade networks, and cultural achievements of the wider Greek world that would emerge after them. While Crete thrived with the elegance of the Minoans, the mainland of Greece gave rise to a different kind of power, the Mycenaean civilization. Here, warrior kings ruled fortified cities like Mycenae, Pylos, and Tiryns, their massive stone walls standing as symbols of strength and authority. Life in Mycenaean society was defined by both ambition and resilience, with palaces serving as centers of administration, trade, and culture. Linear B, their early form of writing, recorded the workings of these complex kingdoms, from inventories of goods to the organization of armies, preserving glimpses of a world that prized order and strategy. Trade and conquest extended Mycenaean influence across the Aegean, connecting them to Crete, Anatolia, and beyond. Tales of heroes, battles, and quests, later immortalized in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, reflect the values of courage, honor, and loyalty that defined their society. Art and craftsmanship flourished alongside military might, with finely crafted weapons, jewelry, and ceremonial objects showcasing both skill and status. Life was a balance of survival, devotion, and aspiration, as communities worked tirelessly to sustain their cities and project power across the sea. Yet even the mightiest civilizations face vulnerability. By the 12th century BCE, Mycenaean society began to crumble, challenged by internal strife, invasions, and the mysterious disruptions that swept the Aegean world. Palaces were abandoned, records vanished, and a dark silence descended over the mainland. The brilliance of the Mycenaeans would fade, but their legends, their innovations, and their spirit endured, laying the groundwork for the Greek world that would rise again in the centuries to come. By the mid-second millennium BCE, the tides of change began to sweep across the Aegean. The once great Minoan palaces that had adorned Crete with their art and sophistication began to decline, their grand halls falling silent, possibly shaken by natural disasters or the expanding influence of the Mycenaeans. As Crete's dominance waned, the Mycenaeans rose to prominence, absorbing Minoan art, religion, and trade networks into their own growing civilization. Their fortified cities and palaces became hubs of power, where strategy, culture, and commerce intertwined to create a society both disciplined and dynamic. Maritime skill and trade allowed the Mycenaeans to project influence across the Aegean, forging connections with islands, Anatolia, and beyond. Their art, crafted with precision and purpose, reflected a world where strength and sophistication coexisted, where heroes and warriors were celebrated alongside priests and artisans. Amid this cultural flowering, tales of great battles and legendary heroes began to take shape. Stories like the Trojan War, woven from myth, but rooted in the echoes of real Mycenaean conflicts, capturing the imagination of generations to come. In this era of interaction and conflict, the Aegean world was both vibrant and volatile. The blending of Minoan refinement with Mycenaean power created a civilization at its peak, yet one teetering on the edge of upheaval. These centuries of achievement and struggle set the stage for the dramatic collapse that would usher in the dark centuries of the Greek Dark Ages, a silence that would eventually give rise to a new chapter in Greek history. By the close of the 12th century BCE, the vibrant world of the Mycenaeans and the remnants of the Minoans fell into sudden and profound turmoil. Palaces that had once stood as symbols of power and culture were abandoned or destroyed, and the intricate, linear B script, which had recorded the workings of these complex societies, vanished from memory. The causes of this collapse were many. Invasions by mysterious sea peoples, devastating earthquakes, famine, and internal strife, all converged to unravel the threads of civilization. Trade routes that had linked islands, cities, and distant lands fell silent, and populations dwindled as communities struggled to survive. The Aegean, once a bustling hub of art, commerce, and culture, entered a period of darkness and uncertainty. Yet even in this silence, seeds of transformation were quietly being sown. The foundations of a new Greek identity, a shared language, belief system, and connection to the land were preserved through oral traditions and local customs. This era, known to history as the Greek Dark Ages, would last for centuries, a time of cultural contraction, but also of preparation. From the ashes of collapsed palaces and abandoned cities, the resilience of the Greek people endured, setting the stage for a remarkable resurgence. Slowly, the villages and settlements that survived would grow, evolve, and lay the groundwork for the rise of city-states, art, and ideas that would one day ignite the archaic period. As the last embers of the Mycenaean world flickered out, Greece entered a period shrouded in shadow, a time where the brilliance of palace life and thriving cities gave way to silence and uncertainty. The great citadels that had once commanded the mainland Mycenae, Pylos, Tiryns, now lay in ruins, their massive walls broken, their halls deserted, echoing the absence of kings, scribes, and warriors who had once filled them with life. The sophisticated networks of trade and administration that had carried goods, wealth, and knowledge across the Aegean collapsed alongside these structures, leaving the land fractured and isolated. Linear B, the elegant script that had recorded the complex workings of these kingdoms, vanished from memory, erasing the stories of kings and citizens, of battles and harvests. Without written records, history became a quiet shadow, and the details of daily life were preserved only in fragments and later oral tradition. Communities that had once thrived under centralized authority now retreated into small, scattered villages. Their populations diminished, their lives focused on survival and the rhythms of the land. The world of the Mycenaeans, with its fortified palaces, grand tombs, and bustling trade, gave way to a simpler, humbler existence. Yet even in this collapse, life persisted. Families cultivated fields, tended flocks, and fished along the shores, carrying forward the skills and knowledge that had sustained their ancestors. Stories of heroes and gods survived in memory, whispered across generations, forming the fragile threads that would one day reconnect Greece to its past. Though the cities lay in ruin and the power of kings had faded, the spirit of the people endured. In the shadows of destruction, resilience took root. From these small, scattered villages, the foundations were quietly being laid for the eventual rise of a new Greece. A Greece that would once again build, explore, and create a civilization remembered for millennia. The collapse was not an end, but the beginning of a transformation that would shape the identity of a people and the course of history. With the collapse of the Mycenaean kingdoms, Greece descended into a world of fragmentation, where once thriving cities were replaced by small, scattered communities tucked into valleys, hills, and along the coastline. The grand halls of kings were gone, and the intricate trade networks that had connected islands, mountains, and distant lands had vanished, leaving villages isolated and largely self-sufficient. Life became simpler, yet harsher, as survival depended on farming, fishing, and tending livestock, with each community navigating its own path in a landscape marked by both opportunity and uncertainty. Despite the loss of writing and central authority, the people of Greece found ways to preserve their culture and identity. Stories, songs, and rituals passed orally from one generation to the next, keeping alive memories of heroes, gods, and extraordinary deeds. Tales of bravery, cleverness, and devotion echoed around hearths and communal gatherings, forming a living memory that would one day inspire epic poetry. These myths became the invisible threads connecting villages, shaping a shared consciousness that transcended the physical separation of communities. In this time of isolation, imagination and memory flourished where formal records had vanished. Heroes like the ones later immortalized in Homer's epics were not written but spoken. Their deeds recounted around fires, at festivals, and during seasonal rituals. Gods and spirits permeated daily life, guiding the choices of farmers, fishermen, and families, while stories of past glories nurtured a sense of pride and belonging. Out of these humble villages, a cultural foundation was quietly forming, one that would endure beyond the dark centuries and ignite the revival of Greek civilization. Even in the shadow of decline, the spirit of the people persisted. Through storytelling, song, and ritual, they preserved knowledge, values, and memory, laying the roots of a shared identity. The fragmented villages, though small and isolated, were the silent incubators of Greece's rebirth, a world where myth and memory would carry the legacy of a civilization through the darkness, preparing it for the dawn of a new age. As Greece wandered through its dark centuries, new waves of people began to reshape the mainland. The Dorians, a formidable and distinct group, migrated into the Greek heartlands, bringing with them fresh dialects, customs, and ways of life. Their arrival stirred the cultural landscape, blending with the surviving populations of the Mycenaean and earlier communities. This convergence of old and new created a subtle transformation, not sudden, but powerful, that would leave lasting marks on the Greek world. The Dorians introduced innovations in warfare, with new styles of weaponry and fortification, strengthening the communities they joined or settled. Agricultural tools evolved, making farming more efficient and ensuring communities could sustain themselves even in the rugged terrains of mountains and valleys. Social structures began to shift as families and clans adjusted to the presence of newcomers, blending leadership traditions and communal organization in ways that would influence the emerging city-states of the future. Yet the impact of the Dorians was not only practical, it was cultural and spiritual. Myths, songs, and oral traditions absorbed new stories, new heroes, and new gods, weaving them into the fabric of memory that had been carefully preserved through the Dark Age. Villages, though still isolated, were now part of a larger cultural dialogue, a slowly reconnecting network of ideas, beliefs, and practices. Through this blending, the foundations of a shared Greek identity, language, ritual, and communal values were strengthened, preparing the land and its people for a remarkable cultural resurgence. In these centuries, Greece was quietly transforming, from the scattered, isolated villages of the post-Mycenaean world to the Dorian-influenced settlements. Resilience, adaptation, and creativity endured. The Dorians were not conquerors alone. They were catalysts, helping to shape a society capable of rising from darkness. A society that would eventually give birth to the city-states, the arts, and the ideas that define classical Greece. As the first shadows of the Greek Dark Ages began to lift, communities that had once been isolated and fragile slowly found ways to endure and adapt. Iron tools, sharper and stronger than the bronze of earlier generations, allowed farmers to cultivate land more efficiently, turning rugged hills and fertile plains into dependable fields. Builders began reconstructing homes and communal spaces, crafting structures that were simple yet resilient, capable of withstanding the challenges of an uncertain world. These practical improvements breathed life back into the villages, laying the groundwork for the more complex societies that would soon emerge. Trade, though still modest, began to resume. Coastal communities and inland settlements cautiously reconnected, exchanging pottery, foodstuffs, and essential goods. These early networks were fragile but vital, gradually knitting the scattered communities into a web of interaction and mutual reliance. Through this renewal of commerce, ideas and practices began to circulate once more, reawakening the exchange of culture that had been all but lost during the darker decades. Religion and communal rituals flourished alongside these practical advancements. Villagers gathered to honor the cycles of nature, the gods of harvest and sea, and the spirits of ancestors. Festivals, sacrifices, and sacred observances reinforced shared beliefs, creating bonds that transcended individual villages and forged a sense of collective identity. It was in these small, determined communities that the resilience of the Greek people shone most brightly, a quiet strength that survived hardship and nurtured the seeds of future greatness. Through adaptation, innovation, and devotion, the scattered settlements of Greece began to rise again. The simple villages of the Dark Ages were transforming into interconnected communities, their people prepared to embrace new opportunities, cultivate knowledge, and create the foundations of a civilization that would once more thrive. In the rhythms of daily life, in the tools forged by human hands, and in the songs and stories passed down through generations, the spirit of Greece endured, ready to ignite a new chapter in its long and remarkable history. By the mid-9th century BCE, the scattered villages of Greece were slowly transforming, quietly laying the foundations for a remarkable resurgence. Small communities, once isolated and vulnerable, began to grow and organize, evolving into early forms of city-states, or polis, that would become the hallmark of Greek civilization. Walls were rebuilt, central meeting places emerged, and communal life strengthened, giving people a sense of belonging and identity beyond their immediate families or villages. These early settlements were modest, yet they carried the energy and ambition of a people ready to reclaim their place in the world. Language, culture, and shared traditions flourished in this renewed society. The Greek language, shaped and preserved through oral storytelling, became a unifying force, enabling communication, trade, and the exchange of ideas across regions. Customs, rituals, and myths that had survived the Dark Ages were reaffirmed, intertwining with new practices and innovations brought by generations of adaptation. This cultural continuity created a shared identity that stretched across the land, planting the seeds of civic pride, loyalty, and the philosophical curiosity that would later define classical Greece. Trade and interaction, though still developing, began to revive. Communities exchanged goods, ideas, and techniques, connecting the islands and mainland in a network that would expand rapidly in the centuries to come. The resilience of the people, their ability to adapt and innovate, set the stage for the flourishing of the archaic period. From these humble beginnings, the vibrant world of Greek city-states, rich in art, governance, and commerce, was emerging once again. In the quiet determination of these early polis, the story of Greece was rekindled. The Dark Ages had tested the people, but they endured, transforming hardship into opportunity, isolation into community, and memory into identity. By the end of this century, the foundations of a civilization that would shape philosophy, politics, and art for millennia were firmly in place, ready to blossom into one of the most extraordinary chapters in human history. As the shadows of the Dark Ages gradually receded, Greece began to awaken once more. Its scattered villages growing in size, ambition, and confidence. From these humble beginnings, the first city-states, or polis, emerged: Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes, each carving out their place on the landscape. What had once been isolated settlements slowly coalesced into organized communities, bound together by walls, shared spaces, and common purpose. Life in these early polis was shaped by cooperation and mutual reliance. As citizens worked to protect their homes, cultivate the land, and lay the foundations for civic life, each city-state developed its own unique identity, forging governments, laws, and social structures suited to its people and geography. Athens began to experiment with governance that would later blossom into democracy, while Sparta cultivated a disciplined, military-focused society. Corinth thrived as a trading hub, and Thebes forged alliances and rivalries that would ripple across the Greek world. In each polis, loyalty extended beyond family and clan, creating a sense of belonging to a larger community. Citizens came to see themselves not only as individuals or villagers, but as part of a collective, invested in the prosperity, safety, and honor of their city. This era of formation also sparked cultural growth. Walls and meeting spaces were not just functional. They became stages for festivals, assemblies, and rituals that reinforced civic pride and social cohesion. Trade, once modest, began to expand, linking cities with neighboring regions and distant lands, and bringing new ideas, crafts, and innovations. Slowly, a shared Greek identity began to emerge. A recognition of common language, gods, and values even amid the unique character of each polis. From the unification of villages into thriving city-states, Greece was laying the groundwork for its next great chapter. The Archaic period had begun, a time when communities would grow in confidence, culture would flourish, and the spirit of civic life would awaken. The small, determined citizens of these early polis were shaping a civilization that would leave a legacy of governance, art, and philosophy for the world to follow. As the city-states of Greece began to flourish, their eyes turned outward, toward the seas that had always shaped their lives. The Greeks, skilled sailors and ambitious traders, embarked on journeys across the Mediterranean and the distant shores of the Black Sea, founding colonies in lands that promised fertile soil, strategic harbors, and new opportunities. These early settlements, though far from home, carried the spirit of their mother cities, extending Greek language, customs, and beliefs across a growing network of trade and culture. Trade became the lifeblood of this expanding world. Olive oil, wine, and pottery flowed from city to city and from coast to coast, connecting the bustling ports of Athens and Corinth to distant lands. Craftsmen honed their skills, creating pottery adorned with intricate designs, while merchants and sailors navigated the waves with knowledge and courage, building relationships with foreign communities. Through this exchange, ideas traveled as quickly as goods, spreading Greek art, religious practices, and technology to new regions. While Greek settlers absorbed the influences of the peoples they encountered, colonization was not only about commerce, it was about identity and survival. By establishing new communities abroad, the Greeks ensured that their culture would thrive even beyond the boundaries of the mainland. Each colony became a miniature polis, reflecting the customs of its homeland while adapting to the opportunities and challenges of distant lands. In this way, Greece was not only reconnecting with its past but also shaping the future, creating a web of cultural and economic ties that strengthened the bonds between distant peoples. Through trade and colonization, the Greek world began to expand, weaving a tapestry of influence that stretched across the seas. The exchange of goods, ideas, and artistic expression laid the foundation for a civilization capable of remarkable creativity, diplomacy, and innovation. By the end of this century, the Greeks had begun to leave a permanent mark on the Mediterranean, setting the stage for the flourishing art, philosophy, and civic life of the Archaic period. As the city-states matured, Greece entered an era of experimentation, where communities explored new ways of organizing themselves and governing their people. Athens, in particular, became a laboratory for political innovation. Under visionary leaders such as Solon, the city began to shape laws that protected citizens, regulated society, and ensured a measure of fairness in disputes. These early reforms laid the groundwork for democracy, giving the people a voice, fostering debate, and encouraging participation in civic life. In Athens, freedom and discussion became the lifeblood of the polis, as citizens learned to balance their duties with their rights. Meanwhile, in the rugged lands of the Peloponnese, Sparta took a very different path. Here, society was molded by the need for order, discipline, and military strength. From an early age, Spartan boys were trained as soldiers, learning endurance, strategy, and loyalty, while the community as a whole emphasized collective unity over individual freedom. Life in Sparta revolved around preparation for war and the maintenance of social stability, producing a society that was formidable, disciplined, and unyielding. The contrast between Athens and Sparta defined the diversity of the Greek world. One celebrated freedom, philosophy, and art. The other valued order, strength, and resilience. Yet both contributed to the evolving Greek identity, teaching lessons about governance, civic responsibility, and the balance between individuality and community. Across the peninsula, laws, councils, and assemblies began to take root in other polis, shaping early concepts of citizenship and social cohesion that would influence generations to come. This period of political innovation reflected the broader energy of the Archaic Age. Greece was no longer merely surviving or trading. It was experimenting, imagining, and constructing the structures that would allow culture, debate, and human achievement to flourish. The ideas born in Athens and Sparta would echo for centuries, forming the pillars of democracy, civic duty, and civic identity that continue to inspire the world today. As the Archaic period unfolded, the Greek world was not only growing in power and governance, but also blossoming in culture, art, and human expression. In 776 BCE, the first Olympic Games were held, bringing together city-states from across the peninsula and islands in a celebration of athletic skill, honor, and unity. These contests were more than sport. They were a shared ritual that forged bonds between communities, inspired stories of heroism, and celebrated the human body and spirit. Art and architecture also flourished, reflecting both religious devotion and civic pride. Sculptors began to explore naturalistic forms, capturing the beauty, movement, and vitality of humans and animals in stone and bronze. Pottery evolved into a medium for storytelling, decorated with scenes of gods, heroes, and everyday life, preserving glimpses of culture for generations to come. Temples and public buildings rose in towns and cities, blending functionality with artistry, serving as centers for worship, gathering, and celebration. Poetry and literature thrived alongside visual arts. Hesiod chronicled the creation of the world, human labor, and divine justice, while Sappho's verses explored love, desire, and the beauty of life with unmatched lyricism. Oral tradition remained central, with myths and epic tales forming a living memory that united Greeks across distant lands. Religious festivals reinforced this connection, blending devotion, drama, and communal identity, and reminding citizens that they were part of a shared heritage spanning generations. Through competition, creativity, and devotion, the Greeks of the Archaic period crafted a culture that celebrated both individual achievement and collective identity. The games, the art, the literature, and the festivals were all expressions of a society awakening to its own potential, laying the foundations for the philosophical, political, and artistic triumphs that would define the classical age. In every sculpted figure, every poem, and every stadium, the spirit of Greece came alive, uniting people in a shared vision of excellence, beauty, and purpose. By the 6th century BCE, the Greek city-states had matured, emerging from centuries of struggle into a period of growing strength, confidence, and ambition. The polis were no longer isolated villages or fledgling communities. They were thriving centers of governance, trade, and culture. Leaders experimented with new forms of political organization, forging laws, councils, and alliances that balanced power, protected citizens, and encouraged civic participation. Athens began laying the groundwork for democracy, while Sparta's military discipline ensured order and resilience, and cities like Corinth and Thebes became hubs of commerce and innovation. This was also a time of remarkable cultural growth. Art and architecture reflected both civic pride and religious devotion, with temples, public spaces, and sculptures displaying technical mastery and aesthetic vision. Pottery depicted scenes of myth, daily life, and heroic deeds, preserving the stories and values that connected Greeks across city-states. Literature and poetry, inspired by the enduring oral traditions of the Dark Ages, explored human experience, morality, and the divine. Philosophical thought began to stir, questioning the world, ethics, and the nature of society, planting seeds that would later bloom in the classical age. Trade and colonization continued to expand Greek influence abroad, spreading language, customs, and art across the Mediterranean and Black Sea. These connections not only enriched local economies, but also fostered a shared cultural identity, a sense that despite local differences, Greeks were part of a broader, interconnected civilization. Festivals, games, and religious rituals reinforced this collective spirit, reminding citizens that they were heirs to a long tradition of resilience, creativity, and civic pride. By the end of the Archaic period, Greece had emerged from the trials of the Dark Ages stronger, more confident, and ready to flourish. The city-states had built foundations of governance, culture, and shared identity that would carry them into the Golden Age of the Classical period. Innovation, artistry, and civic life converged, setting the stage for an era that would redefine philosophy, politics, and the very idea of what it meant to be Greek. At the dawn of the 5th century BCE, the Greek world faced an existential threat. The mighty Persian Empire, stretching from the deserts of Mesopotamia to the mountains of Anatolia, cast its shadow over the Aegean. City-states that had long been rivals now confronted a common enemy. Persia's vast armies and fleets threatened the independence of every polis, from the islands of the Cyclades to the plains of Attica, and the Greek world faced the possibility of subjugation. The response was extraordinary. Athens and Sparta, often divided by politics, geography, and ideology, found unity in the face of danger. In 490 BCE, the Athenians met the Persians at Marathon, their hoplites forming an unbreakable phalanx that would shock the empire and inspire generations of Greeks. A decade later, the Persian forces returned, determined to conquer the peninsula, but were met at sea by the clever strategy of the Greeks at Salamis in 480 BCE, where Athenian ships outmaneuvered the larger Persian fleet. Finally, at Plataea in 479 BCE, a decisive land battle crushed the remaining Persian forces, securing freedom for the Greek city-states. These victories were more than military triumphs. They reshaped the Greek world. Athens emerged as a leading power, its confidence and prestige soaring, while the spirit of unity demonstrated that, despite their differences, the city-states could come together for a common purpose. The wars also ignited a sense of cultural pride, inspiring art, literature, and philosophy that celebrated courage, strategy, and the values of freedom. Greek identity, forged over centuries of struggle and adaptation, had been tested on the battlefield and had emerged stronger than ever. The Persian invasions left an enduring legacy. They demonstrated the power of cooperation, the value of citizen soldiers, and the potential of human ingenuity against overwhelming odds. Athens' rise to prominence set the stage for the Golden Age, a period of unparalleled achievement in democracy, philosophy, drama, and art. In repelling Persia, the Greeks not only defended their land, but also defined the ideals that would shape Western civilization for centuries to come. In the wake of the Persian Wars, Athens emerged not only victorious but transformed, entering an era of unprecedented cultural and political achievement. Under the leadership of Pericles, the city became the heart of Greek innovation, a beacon of democracy, philosophy, and artistic brilliance. Citizens engaged in civic life with pride and purpose, shaping a society where debate, governance, and participation were central to identity. The ideals of freedom, justice, and collective responsibility flourished, setting Athens apart as a model of civic ambition. Architecture soared to new heights. The Parthenon, perched majestically atop the Acropolis, symbolized both devotion to the gods and the artistic genius of the Athenians. Its intricate columns and sculptures reflected harmony, proportion, and a celebration of human creativity, inspiring awe in all who beheld it. Across the city, public spaces, temples, and monuments became stages for civic life, honoring gods, heroes, and the city itself. Meanwhile, the theater became a mirror of society, exploring the depths of human experience. Playwrights such as Sophocles, Euripides, and Aeschylus crafted dramas that grappled with fate, morality, and the consequences of choice, captivating audiences while offering profound reflections on ethics and the human condition. Philosophers like Socrates and Plato challenged citizens to question, to reason, and to seek knowledge beyond the surface of the world, sowing the seeds of intellectual traditions that would echo for millennia. Athens' Golden Age was a fusion of ambition, creativity, and civic engagement. The city-state demonstrated that power could be expressed not only through conquest, but through culture, art, and ideas. Its citizens, inspired by both freedom and responsibility, transformed daily life into an ongoing experiment in excellence. In this period, Athens became a symbol of what human society could achieve when imagination, intellect, and governance converged, laying the foundations for Western thought, philosophy, and the arts. Even in the wake of Athens' Golden Age, unity among the Greek city-states proved fragile. Rivalries that had long simmered beneath the surface erupted into open conflict, and in 431 BCE, the Peloponnesian War began a brutal struggle that would engulf much of Greece for nearly 3 decades. Athens and its allies, boasting a powerful navy and flourishing economy, faced the militarily disciplined Spartans and their Peloponnesian League. What started as a contest of influence soon turned into a war that tested loyalty, endurance, and the very fabric of Greek society. The conflict left a trail of devastation across the peninsula. Cities were besieged, farmland destroyed, and trade disrupted. A deadly plague struck Athens, claiming thousands of lives, including the influential leader Pericles, further shaking the morale and leadership of the city. Families endured hardship, and communities struggled to maintain order as fear and uncertainty pervaded daily life. The war revealed both the brilliance and the fragility of the Greek world. Strategy, courage, and ingenuity were evident on the battlefield, yet internal divisions and prolonged conflict brought suffering and chaos to the people. After decades of struggle, Athens finally surrendered in 404 BCE. Sparta emerged victorious, but the triumph was hollow. The war had weakened both sides, leaving Greece politically fragmented and socially exhausted. The power, confidence, and prosperity of the Golden Age had been severely undermined, and city-states now faced a period of instability and shifting alliances. Yet even in defeat, lessons endured. The importance of strategy, civic engagement, and the delicate balance between freedom and order would influence Greek thought and governance for generations. The Peloponnesian War marked a turning point, signaling the end of the classical zenith and opening the door to new powers and ideas. While Athens' brilliance had dimmed and Sparta's dominance proved temporary, the resilience of Greek culture endured. From the ruins of war, new political thinkers, philosophers, and leaders would emerge, preparing the stage for the rise of Macedonia and the transformative era of Alexander the Great. As the 4th century BCE dawned, the fragmented Greek city-states faced a new force rising in the north. Philip II of Macedonia, a brilliant strategist and ambitious ruler, embarked on a campaign to unite the often divided Greek world. Through diplomacy, conquest, and careful alliances, he brought Athens, Thebes, and the other polis under Macedonian influence, creating a political landscape vastly different from the independent city-states that had once defined Greece. The era of fierce independence was ending, replaced by the order imposed by a new, ambitious power. Though Athens lost its military dominance, the city remained a beacon of culture and learning. Philosophers, artists, and writers continued to thrive, and the intellectual legacy of the classical period persisted. Schools of thought explored ethics, logic, and the natural world, sustaining a tradition of inquiry that would influence generations far beyond the city's borders. Even as political power shifted, Athens' influence in education, philosophy, and the arts endured, proving that military defeat did not erase cultural achievement. During this time, Aristotle, one of history's greatest thinkers, tutored Philip's son, Alexander, imparting lessons in philosophy, science, and governance that would shape the future ruler's vision of the world. Greek thought, refined over centuries of inquiry and debate, now intersected with Macedonian ambition, linking the intellectual achievements of the city-states to the coming era of conquest and empire. The fusion of Greek knowledge with Macedonian power set the stage for a transformation that would spread Hellenic culture from the Aegean to the farthest reaches of Asia. The rise of Macedonia marked both an end and a beginning. The classical city-states would never again dominate the Mediterranean in isolation. Yet the ideas, art, and philosophy of Greece were poised to travel farther than ever before. From the halls of Athens to the courts of Macedonia, Greek thought was preparing to shape the destiny of the world, guiding leaders, inspiring soldiers, and leaving a legacy that would resonate across continents for centuries to come. As the 4th century BCE progressed, the legacy of Greece began to extend far beyond its city-states. Even before the rise of Alexander the Great, the ideas, art, and philosophy of the Greek world had started to spread across the Mediterranean and Near East. Trade routes, colonies, and the movement of scholars and artisans carried the brilliance of Greek thought to distant lands, planting seeds that would flourish in the coming centuries. Language, literature, and artistic traditions crossed borders, creating a shared cultural framework that transcended local politics and geography. Greek achievements in science, mathematics, and architecture inspired new ways of thinking. Observations of the stars, studies of the human body, and the design of temples and public spaces reflected an understanding of harmony, proportion, and logic. Philosophers and poets continued to explore questions of ethics, beauty, and the human condition, refining ideas that would influence scholars for generations. These accomplishments formed a foundation upon which the Hellenistic era would build, ensuring that the influence of Greek civilization would extend far beyond its original heartland. This period of intellectual and cultural preparation set the stage for Alexander's conquests. The knowledge and ideals cultivated in the city-states became tools for leadership, governance, and diplomacy. Greek culture was no longer confined to the hills of Attica or the plains of Sparta. It was ready to travel, to mingle with other civilizations, and to inspire a new, cosmopolitan world. Art, literature, and philosophy would merge with the traditions of Egypt, Persia, and India, creating a vibrant Hellenistic civilization that blended ideas and achievements from across continents. By the end of this century, Greece had done more than survive political shifts and warfare. Its intellectual and cultural legacy had been firmly established, preparing the world for an era in which Greek civilization would reach its greatest extent. The achievements of thinkers, artists, and city-states laid the foundation for a transformation that would not only reshape the Mediterranean, but leave an indelible mark on history itself, influencing science, politics, and art for millennia to come. With the foundations of Greek culture firmly in place, a young and ambitious leader rose to reshape the known world. Alexander, the son of Philip II of Macedonia, ascended to the throne with unparalleled vision and determination. Trained by the philosopher Aristotle, he combined intellect with military genius, seeing not just lands to conquer, but a world ready to be united under Greek ideas, culture, and governance. In 334 BCE, he embarked on a campaign that would forever alter the course of history. Alexander's armies swept across Persia with remarkable speed and strategy, toppling cities, defeating powerful kings, and absorbing the riches and knowledge of conquered lands. Egypt welcomed him as a liberator, and there he founded the city of Alexandria, which would become a beacon of learning, culture, and scientific discovery. Beyond Egypt, his forces reached the edges of India, bringing Greek influence to lands that had never before encountered the Mediterranean world. Along the way, Alexander spread not just armies, but ideas, language, and governance, blending Greek practices with local traditions in a remarkable fusion of cultures. Every city he founded became a center of Hellenistic civilization, where scholars, artists, and merchants could exchange knowledge and goods. Greek philosophy, literature, and science traveled alongside armies, creating a cultural network that stretched from the Aegean to the Indus. The fusion of Greek and Eastern traditions reshaped art, architecture, and thought, creating a cosmopolitan world that would influence generations long after Alexander's untimely death in 323 BCE. Alexander's conquests demonstrated the extraordinary reach of Greek culture when coupled with ambition and vision. His campaigns did not simply expand territory. They transformed the intellectual and cultural landscape, leaving a legacy that would define the Hellenistic era. Through his journeys, Greece's influence became global, linking civilizations across continents and establishing cities, ideas, and institutions that would endure for centuries. The world would never again be the same, and the age of Hellenistic brilliance had truly begun. Alexander the Great had achieved the unimaginable. In just over a decade, he had conquered Persia, Egypt, and reached the edges of India, spreading Greek language, culture, and governance across continents. Cities like Alexandria became thriving centers of learning and trade, connecting far-flung peoples through a shared vision of civilization. Yet, as brilliant and unstoppable as Alexander was, his sudden death in 323 BCE, at the age of 32, left a massive empire without a leader capable of holding it together. The world he had conquered stood on the edge of uncertainty, its fate resting in the hands of ambitious generals eager to carve out their own realms. The empire was soon divided, not in chaos, but in a calculated reshaping of power. Ptolemy took Egypt, establishing a dynasty centered in Alexandria, a city that would remain a beacon of culture, science, and learning for centuries. Seleucus claimed the vast lands of Asia, stretching from the Aegean to the borders of India, blending Greek administration with local traditions and forging a complex, multicultural kingdom. Macedonia and Greece itself fell under the Antigonid dynasty, retaining military strength and political structures, even as the heartlands of Greek culture faced new challenges. These Hellenistic kingdoms were not merely political entities. They were carriers of Greek ideas, language, and art, transplanted across new regions and embraced by diverse populations. The division of Alexander's empire also marked the birth of a new era, one defined not just by conquest, but by cultural fusion. Greek settlers, scholars, and merchants mingled with native populations, creating cosmopolitan cities where Hellenic philosophy, art, and architecture thrived alongside local customs. Trade and communication flourished, spreading knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and literature across continents. Even amid rivalry and occasional warfare, the legacy of Alexander's vision endured, uniting lands and peoples under the banner of Hellenistic civilization. From the shock of his sudden death emerged a transformed world. The Hellenistic kingdoms carried forward the spirit of Greece, turning the achievements of city-states and the brilliance of one extraordinary conqueror into a foundation for a cosmopolitan civilization that would influence the Mediterranean, Near East, and beyond for centuries. The story of Greece had expanded far beyond its hills and islands, leaving a legacy that would endure long after the last pharaoh and the final Macedonian king. With Alexander's empire divided among his generals, the world entered a new era, the Hellenistic Age. Greek culture, once confined to city-states like Athens and Sparta, now spread across vast territories, mingling with the traditions of Egypt, Persia, and beyond. Art, architecture, and religion evolved as local customs blended seamlessly with Hellenic ideals. Temples incorporated new designs, statues captured influences from multiple regions, and religious practices merged Greek gods with local deities, creating a rich tapestry of spiritual and cultural life. Language became a unifying thread across the Hellenistic world. Greek was spoken in courts, marketplaces, and schools from Alexandria to Antioch, fostering communication, scholarship, and trade. Philosophers and thinkers carried the legacies of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle into new lands, inspiring inquiry and debate. Libraries and academies flourished, particularly in Alexandria, where scholars studied mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and geography, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. These cities became hubs of innovation, where commerce, culture, and science intersected, and ideas traveled faster than armies ever could. Trade and connectivity transformed everyday life. Merchants, artisans, and travelers carried goods, stories, and inventions across continents. Coins, inscriptions, and architectural motifs reflected a shared identity, while local traditions persisted, creating a vibrant and cosmopolitan civilization. Hellenistic art captured both realism and idealism, depicting human emotion and divine grandeur, while literature and theater flourished, exploring universal themes that transcended borders. This fusion of cultures created a world in which Greek ideas were not just preserved but expanded. Science, philosophy, and the arts reached new heights, and the interconnected cities of the Hellenistic world became laboratories of human achievement. Even centuries later, the legacy of this era would echo through Roman civilization, the Byzantine Empire, and the Renaissance, proving that the blending of cultures can create a civilization greater than the sum of its parts. The Hellenistic Age was not just an inheritance of Greece. It was a new, expansive world shaped by imagination, ambition, and the enduring spirit of human creativity. The Hellenistic Age was not only a period of political transformation, but also a golden era of knowledge, science, and artistic innovation. As Greek culture blended with Eastern traditions, scholars and thinkers pushed the boundaries of human understanding like never before. In astronomy, Aristarchus of Samos proposed that the sun, not the earth, was the center of the universe, challenging centuries of conventional thought. While Hipparchus meticulously cataloged the stars, creating systems of measurement that would guide future astronomers for centuries. Mathematics flourished alongside observation of the natural world. Euclid, working in Alexandria, laid the foundations of geometry, producing works that would become the cornerstone of mathematical education for millennia. Scholars measured, calculated, and reasoned with precision, building a systematic understanding of space, proportion, and logic. Medicine advanced as well, with Herophilus dissecting the human body to study anatomy, pioneering methods that transformed medical knowledge and practice. Art and sculpture mirrored these advancements, capturing human emotion, movement, and realism with astonishing skill. Statues and reliefs portrayed not only gods and heroes but ordinary people in lifelike forms, their gestures and expressions conveying story and feeling. Architecture embraced grandeur and innovation, with theaters, temples, and public buildings designed to inspire awe and reflection. Cities became laboratories of human achievement, where science, philosophy, art, and daily life intersected in vibrant, cosmopolitan centers. Through these achievements, the Hellenistic world preserved and expanded the legacy of classical Greece. Knowledge was no longer confined to city-states, but traveled across continents, shaping future civilizations and influencing Roman, Byzantine, and later European thought. The Hellenistic era demonstrated the extraordinary potential of human curiosity, imagination, and collaboration, showing that the blending of cultures could produce discoveries, innovations, and beauty that endure for centuries. In every star chart, every mathematical proof, and every sculpted figure, the brilliance of this age illuminated the path for generations to come. Even as the Hellenistic kingdoms flourished culturally and intellectually, internal conflicts and power struggles gradually weakened their political foundations. Rivalries between the Ptolemies in Egypt, the Seleucids in Asia, and the Antigonids in Macedonia drained resources, fractured alliances, and created instability. Generals and kings fought for dominance, while local populations endured the uncertainty of shifting rule. Over time, the great empires Alexander had inspired could no longer maintain cohesion, leaving them vulnerable to new external forces. Into this vacuum stepped Rome, an emerging power from the Italian peninsula. Initially drawn into Greek affairs through alliances and conflicts, the Romans steadily expanded their influence, asserting military and political dominance across the region. One city-state after another fell under Roman control, and by 146 BCE, following the destruction of Corinth, Greece's centuries of political independence came to an end. Yet, while Rome conquered Greek lands, it could not conquer Greek culture. Philosophy, literature, art, and science continued to thrive, and the Romans eagerly absorbed Greek knowledge, education, and aesthetic ideals. Greek influence spread across the Mediterranean through Roman adoption. Roman elites studied Greek philosophy and rhetoric. Greek sculptors and architects shaped Roman cities, and Greek ideas of democracy, ethics, and civic responsibility informed governance. Cities like Athens and Alexandria remained centers of learning, preserving libraries, academies, and traditions of scholarship. The fusion of Greek intellectual and cultural achievements with Roman organization created a foundation that would profoundly shape the Roman Empire and, later, Western civilization itself. The fall of political independence did not mark the end of Greek civilization. Instead, it transformed into a cultural force whose ideas, art, and philosophies transcended borders and time. From the ruins of kingdoms and the halls of Roman forums to the future Renaissance and modern Western thought, the spirit of Greece endured. It had begun on the hills and islands of the Aegean millennia earlier, and even under new rulers, Greek culture continued to illuminate the world, leaving a legacy of knowledge, creativity, and inspiration that resonates to this day. By 146 BCE, the independent city-states of Greece faced a force they could no longer resist. Rome, having steadily expanded across the Mediterranean, turned its attention to the Greek world. The decisive Battle of Corinth marked the end of centuries of Greek political autonomy. Corinth was destroyed, and the mainland of Greece, along with its key islands, fell under Roman control. For the first time, the landscape of the Aegean was dominated by a foreign power, signaling a profound shift in the balance of authority and governance. Despite the loss of independence, Greek culture remained resilient. The Romans, though conquerors, were deeply impressed by Greek art, literature, philosophy, and education. Cities continued to function as centers of culture, with Athens retaining its schools of philosophy and Corinth rebuilding as a hub of trade and learning. The Roman administration allowed local traditions and cultural practices to persist, ensuring that Greek identity was not erased, but rather preserved under new political structures. Greek temples, theaters, and public spaces continued to inspire awe and serve as focal points for civic life. This conquest also marked the beginning of a remarkable exchange. Rome absorbed the intellectual and artistic achievements of Greece, transforming them into a cornerstone of Roman culture. Greek literature, science, and philosophy influenced Roman thinkers, politicians, and architects. The knowledge cultivated over centuries of Greek civilization now spread throughout the Roman world, reaching territories far beyond the Aegean. Greek ideas of democracy, ethics, and civic responsibility informed the Roman approach to governance, education, and public life, creating a bridge between the classical world and the emerging empire. Though Greece no longer ruled itself politically, its cultural and intellectual influence endured, proving that conquest could not extinguish the spirit of a civilization. The foundations laid over millennia from the Minoans to the Hellenistic kingdoms continued to illuminate the Roman world. Greece had been conquered, but its ideas, art, and philosophy would travel far beyond the borders of its homeland, shaping the course of Western history for centuries to come. Though the Romans had conquered Greece politically, the Greeks retained a quiet but profound power, the power of culture, intellect, and creativity. Even under Roman rule, Greek cities remained vibrant centers of learning and art. Philosophers taught, architects designed, and scholars continued their research, influencing not only their fellow Greeks, but also the Roman elite who sought to emulate their sophistication. Greek knowledge and wisdom flowed into Roman society, shaping the minds of leaders, generals, and citizens alike. Greek tutors instructed Roman children in literature, rhetoric, and philosophy, passing on the intellectual traditions that had flourished for centuries. Greek sculptors and architects designed buildings and monuments that would define Roman aesthetics. Greek ideas of politics, ethics, and education became central to Roman civic life. As one historian famously noted, Greece had conquered her conqueror, leaving an indelible mark on Roman culture. The philosophy of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, the artistry of Hellenistic sculptors, and the science of scholars such as Euclid and Aristarchus became the foundation upon which Rome built its own civilization. This cultural dominance extended beyond education and the arts. Greek influence shaped religion, theater, literature, and public discourse across the Roman world. Cities like Athens and Alexandria continue to serve as hubs of intellectual life, where scholars debated, wrote, and taught. Greek language and ideas spread throughout the empire, ensuring that the legacy of the classical world was preserved, studied, and expanded. Even as political power shifted, the Greek spirit remained alive, guiding the cultural development of one of history's greatest empires. Through this fusion, Greek civilization achieved a remarkable immortality. Political independence may have ended, but its ideas, philosophy, and art became universal, influencing generations far beyond the Mediterranean. From the Roman Empire to the Byzantine period, and later the Renaissance, Greek culture endured as a guiding light of human achievement. The legacy of Greece was no longer confined to its mountains and islands. It had become the intellectual and artistic heart of the Western world, shaping the course of history for millennia. Even under Roman rule, the great cities of Greece continued to shine as beacons of learning, culture, and artistry. Athens, Corinth, and Rhodes, among others, remained vibrant centers where philosophy, rhetoric, and science were studied with rigor and passion. Scholars debated ideas in public forums, students honed their skills in the art of persuasion, and libraries preserved centuries of accumulated knowledge. These cities became training grounds not only for Greeks but also for Roman and foreign elites who sought to master the intellectual and cultural achievements of the classical world. Greek temples, theaters, and monuments stood as enduring symbols of civilization, inspiring awe and admiration. They were more than architectural feats. They embodied the values, myths, and traditions that had shaped Greek identity for millennia. Festivals, performances, and public rituals continued to celebrate both human creativity and divine inspiration, linking past generations to the present. In these cultural centers, the spirit of Greece remained alive, guiding thought, art, and civic life, even as political control rested in Roman hands. Trade, scholarship, and artistic exchange flourished in these hubs, creating networks that connected the Mediterranean world. Philosophical schools transmitted ideas of ethics, logic, and civic responsibility. Artists and architects innovated while drawing on Hellenistic and classical traditions. Science and medicine progressed, building on the discoveries of Euclid, Aristarchus, and Herophilus. Across cities, Greek culture adapted and thrived, proving that political conquest could not suppress the enduring power of knowledge and creativity. Through these continued cultural centers, Greece ensured its influence over the Roman world and beyond. While political independence had ended, The cities of learning and culture became living legacies of a civilization that had begun on the islands and hills of the Aegean thousands of years earlier. Greek thought, art, and education were preserved, celebrated, and transmitted to future generations, cementing Greece's role as the enduring intellectual and artistic heart of the Mediterranean world. Even as political power shifted to Rome, Greek philosophical thought continued to shape the minds and lives of people across the Mediterranean. Schools of philosophy that had flourished in Athens, Rhodes, and Alexandria spread widely, offering guidance not only on personal ethics, but on civic life and governance. Stoicism, emphasizing reason, self-control, and virtue, became a guiding philosophy for Roman leaders, soldiers, and citizens alike, teaching the importance of inner strength and moral clarity in a turbulent world. Alongside Stoicism, Epicureanism offered a different path: the pursuit of happiness through moderation, friendship, and the avoidance of unnecessary pain. These teachings resonated deeply with thinkers and ordinary people alike, influencing personal conduct, political decision-making, and approaches to community life. Greek philosophy, refined over centuries, became integrated into Roman law, education, and civic structures, shaping the principles of governance and public ethics that would endure for millennia. The influence of Greek thought extended far beyond Rome. Scholars, educators, and writers carried these ideas into the Byzantine Empire, where Greek learning was preserved and adapted. Centuries later, during the Renaissance, European thinkers rediscovered and embraced Greek philosophy, art, and science, drawing inspiration from centuries-old teachings that had traveled through empires, languages, and cultures. The lessons of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and later Hellenistic philosophers became a foundation for modern Western thought, continuing to guide ethics, law, and intellectual inquiry. Through philosophy, the Greeks demonstrated that true power lies not only in armies or political control, but in ideas that shape minds and societies. While Rome ruled the land, the Greek spirit governed thought, reasoning, and education. Their enduring philosophies proved that the legacy of Greece was timeless, a guiding light in human understanding, shaping civilizations long after the original city-states had lost their independence. The wisdom of Greece became a bridge between the ancient world and the modern, a testament to the enduring influence of a civilization whose ideas continue to inspire humanity today. The story of Greece did not end with political conquest or the fall of empires. Greek culture, philosophy, and art survived through the Byzantine Empire, where scholars preserved ancient texts, traditions, and scientific knowledge. The wisdom of the classical world continued to be studied, debated, and taught, ensuring that the achievements of the Greeks were never lost. Greek ideas of governance, ethics, and civic responsibility influenced education, law, and societal norms, creating a bridge between the ancient and medieval worlds. Centuries later, during the Renaissance, European scholars rediscovered Greek literature, art, and science, sparking a revival of learning that reshaped the continent. Artists studied Greek sculpture and architecture. Writers translated philosophical texts, and scientists drew inspiration from Greek discoveries in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. The Renaissance became a renaissance not just of Europe, but of Greek ideas themselves, showing that the intellectual legacy of Greece was timeless and universal. Modern Western civilization continues to inherit and build upon Greek achievements. Democracy, philosophy, scientific inquiry, literature, and artistic ideals all trace their roots to the classical world. Greek thought shapes education, political systems, and cultural expression across continents, centuries after the last city-states fell. From the halls of universities to the architecture of cities, the influence of Greece remains evident, guiding human creativity and reasoning to this day. Through its enduring legacy, Greece demonstrates the power of ideas over conquest, of culture over politics, The civilization that began on the islands and hills of the Aegean continues to illuminate the modern world. Philosophy, democracy, art, and science, once cultivated by Minoans, Mycenaeans, and city-states like Athens and Sparta, remain central to human progress. Greece's story is not just one of the past. It is a living inheritance, shaping minds, inspiring achievement, and guiding the course of history for millennia.